So hello everyone, Yash here from Shardium Foundation. I am a committer at Shardium and I welcome you to Build Web3 with Shardium webinar series. Today's session is something I have been looking forward to for a very long time now, and that is creating DAOs. Everybody is interested, and DAOs have been making a lot of buzz, but it's just not a buzz. We There's a lot of things that we'll be discussing later about DAOs, about the governance, and a lot of stuff here. So we have seen a lot of DAOs like Developer DAO, Maker DAO, and there's something called Super Team DAO in India as well. So a lot of DAOs. So it's gonna be an interesting session ahead. Um, and you'll not only learn how to create DAOs, but if you stick till the end, you'll also get some Shardim swags, which you've been seeing people posting on social medias. So that's there as well. And in case if you want to take your cat for a walk or feed your dog in the middle and you miss some of the session, you can always find this session on YouTube because we are recording this. So I'll also put Shardium's YouTube channel here, so you can find this session there. So yeah, that's there. This session will be conducted by Jivin and Coad. They are Shardium community members, and interestingly, they are building Shardium's first lending protocol. That's DAC protocol. We'll be talking about that later, or maybe they'll introduce themselves and talk about DAC protocol. So that's there. So that's an introduction about Jivin and Coad. Over to you guys. Please tell us where are you from, and what are you building, and then we'll jump into the topic of how to create DAOs because I'm super excited about this. So that's there. Over to you guys.
Okay, so I'm gonna introduce myself. I'm Core. I'm basically like right now staying in Ladakh, like a digital nomad and whatnot. I'm a member of the DAC team, working on ecosystem development, research collaborations and whatnot. Also, I work with a lot of exciting projects for research and support. Uh, also, sort of translating these kind of many languages that come across this cross-disciplinary field. Kind of weaving in this ecosystem together, and I look forward to having this interactive session with you guys and see what comes out of it. And I'll hand it over to Jivin to introduce, and we're going to be doing
Awesome.
sort of
Yeah. So hi guys, I'm Jivin. I'm currently developing DAC protocol on Shardium. So a little bit about me. I was doing full stack development 2 years back, and something interesting. I saw something interesting on YouTube about crypto and Web3, and after that, it fascinated me a lot. And ever since 2020, I've been involved in the Web3 space, building some projects on Ethereum, some NFT collections, and DeFi projects as well. And we also have another project on Polygon that's called Project Kila. Uh, so what that does is basically it gives you NFTs as trees, and you can buy those trees in order to, it's like a carbon credit on chain. So whatever carbon that tree is offsetting, you can view that on chain through oracles, and it's full transparency because all the data is on chain. So that's what we're building. And currently our full focus is on building the DAC protocol and making it live on the Liberty testnet on Shardium. So yeah, and I'm going to be conducting this webinar with you guys on creating DAOs. So yeah, let's begin, guys.
Damn.
All right. So what is a DAO? Right. Anyone can raise hands and tell me who has heard about DAOs previously and for whom like DAOs is a completely new concept.
Maybe they can put that on the chat also. So
Yeah.
yeah,
For sure.
do type in, guys. What's DAO?
What's a DAO? What do you think? How much have you known about DAOs? What do you plan to learn? And
Okay, people are saying I heard a lot of hype about Super Team DAO. It's decentralized autonomous organization. Somebody said it's a big
okay.
idea. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's saying yeah.
Okay.
They're just elaborating it.
Awesome. Right. So yeah, someone said it that a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. So it's a community-led entity without a central authority. So it's like a company, but it's on chain, and it doesn't need a chief executive or a manager to, carry out the decision-making process of the organization. All the things can be done by the members of this organization through governance that we looked into later in this webinar. And so ultimately, it is a governed entity by which individual members who collectively make critical decisions over the future of any kind of project, protocol, or even a company for that matter. So let's say you have a Coca-Cola DAO, right? And all of you have Coke tokens, and you guys just decided that Coke should launch a cherry flavor. Everyone can vote on that. Everyone can submit a proposal. Someone submits a proposal that I like this cherry flavor a lot, and I think this would be good for the market, and we can capture some market share through this flavor. And you guys can vote on that, based on which you can move forward with reducing that flavor, pushing it to market and whatnot. So generally speaking, community members create proposals about the future operations of the protocol and then come together to vote on each proposal. Okay. And a healthy, robust protocol will garner more usage and in turn increase the value of the tokens of which each DAO member is in possession of. So basically what I'm trying to say is that as you take better and better decisions, your DAO would prosper, and your token might increase in value, and your DAO will also prosper. So it's a win-win situation for everyone, guys. Because in a company, for example, you're an employee and the CEO took some decisions and he earned a big bonus, but everyone can earn that bonus. So it's egalitarianism at its best. And yeah, that's what excites me about DAOs as well. So how does a DAO work? So the rules are established by a core team of community members through the use of smart contracts. Okay. So you can call a DAO as an AI that is running on a blockchain, and that AI is deciding itself based on your inputs, what decisions have to be made and what kind of actions have to be taken in the future for that. And once these rules are formally written into the blockchain, the next step is to around funding. The DAO needs to figure out how to receive funding and how to bestow governance. So this is typically achieved through token issuance. So for example, like we have Compound DAO or MakerDAO, and what they do is they dispatch tokens to you guys that you guys can purchase, and that'll give you a governance right. So you can vote if you hold that token from that organization. Holding that token signifies that you are a member of the DAO and you can partake in the decision-making process for that organization. So how to get involved? Once you found a project of interest, there are a few different ways to get directly involved. You can buy a token, or and there are a lot of other things as well that you can do. Is you can create proposals, create some kind of white papers or articles published that why such proposal or such steps would be beneficial for the DAO, that the voters can have a look at it, and if they agree with you, they can decide with you through governance, and you can basically help the DAO grow even more. And yeah, so why Shardium, right? Why Shardium to use the DAO? So Shardium is the world's first EVM-based L1, which uses sharding. So unlike other chains like Polygon and Arbitrum or Optimism, etc., Shardium is not layer 2, which means it's not built on top of Ethereum. It's a separate chain that is using EVM, but the mechanics are totally non-Ethereum reliant, I would say. And the cool thing about Shardium is that it uses a technology that is called sharding to increase transactions per second. Now, currently, the biggest problem in the industry is transactions per second and gas fees. So due to, Ethereum processing 15 to 20 transactions per second, that's why the gas fees are so high, because traffic on Ethereum has been growing since 2015, but the transactions have not grown, even remotely as well as the rate of adoption. So that's the biggest problem in Ethereum. That's why we have heard so many people paying hundreds of dollars in gas fee sometimes. And it doesn't matter whether your transaction itself is worth $10, you still have to pay $10, $100 if the network is congested at the moment. So that's definitely not a feasible, network to carry out day-to-day transactions with. If you're paying 10x the amount of your, transaction, and Shardium aims to solve that through, sharding. So what sharding is dividing up the whole blockchain into shards or various pieces, and every piece can run simultaneously inside the network. And so consider a database, right? You're distributing that database and feeding different kinds of data simultaneously into those pieces so that you can carry out more transactions every second that you want. So that's something Shardium uses to increase the transaction per second with the addition of every new node. So, there's a concept called linearly scalable, that is Shardium. So as new nodes are being added into the network, the transactions per second will actually increase due to sharding. So, I mean, I think this is a revolutionary concept. And yeah, once the mainnet is live, I think Shardium is going to be a big player in the industry. Josh, you want to add anything, bro?
No, I think you put that in a very great way. And again, so when you're talking about Ethereum, yeah, man, I recently, this is something that I'd like to add. I was recently paying someone $5 and I had to
Mhm.
pay $2 in gas fees. Again, that's a very small
Right.
amount, but yeah, people have paid, I mean, so many ETHs just for the
Yeah.
fee. So
Yeah. For me as well, like one time I deployed a smart contract on the Ethernet and I had to pay $400 for that.
exactly. So in the long run, when I mean when these networks again they are mainstream, but in order to go more mainstream, in order to get like the worldwide adoption, definitely we need to have low gas fees, and that's what we like. That's what Shardium and Shardium community is trying to solve.
Right.
So yeah, this is very interesting that we'll be building DAO on top of Shardium. If Code wants to add something here, or if not, maybe we'll move forward. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'll take the non-technical approach to it. Why I chose to build a startup because of the open community and the open vibes that it gives me. I mean, you could go into the Shardium server and could talk to the highest authority. And there's no, you don't have to go through the hierarchy and channels. Or and now I need to seek appointment with Yash, and you have to seek appointment with Chandresh and blah blah blah. And then maybe, if possible, it will reach Omar or Dishu. I mean, it's an open community, and that's what I love about it.
Right.
And that was my
Me
one of
too.
the my reasons of actually joining Shardium. We approached Omar, and within I think 5 minutes, he replied back to us like, "Yeah, this
Yeah,
is something
for sure.
exciting for us." That was my thing.
Yeah, even Greg and everyone, they're just like a great community overall. Like when we first started, developing on Shardium, and the kind of responses we got from these top tier guys working there, and it was like amazing. It felt like we were being actually valued over here, and we felt like we belong here. So yeah, we decided to build on Shardium.
Yeah, man,
All
that's
right.
great. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
let's move ahead and let's give people what they
sure. Let's look at the code
kind
now,
of
guys.
yeah.
Let's see the software. Okay, so we'll work with the smart contracts. We'll discuss what each and every contract does, and we'll deploy them on local blockchain on my computer. And we'll go through the whole process of governance together as well. So yeah, let's go. So the four main contracts that this DAO of ours will have is the governor contract, the time lock, the treasury, and the token, our token. So the first things first, we'll have to use our token. It's called the governance token. And what basically this is, it's an ERC20 token. I'm sure you guys have heard about ERC20 tokens. It's basically like any token on the Ethereum network. But this is a special kind of ERC20 token because this has to incorporate governance and voting mechanisms, etc., into it. So we are going to be using Open Zeppelin library, guys. It's a very helpful library that I love to use, and every smart contract developer should know what Open Zeppelin is. Um,
Along with so let's say if you're opening all of these links, you can also put these links on the chat so that let's say if
for sure,
somebody
for sure,
code along that they'll also have I don't know.
for sure. but I'm not able to open the chat somehow. That's strange. Cool. I mean, guys, you can search for Open Zeppelin contracts, and the first thing that pops up is good enough for you. And Open Zeppelin also has a very good tool called the Open Zeppelin Contracts Wizard. So it'll create ERC20 NFTs and ERC1155 NFTs for you, as well as governor contracts. So even I have used this as a reference to build our DAO. This is a very good tool for you guys. It basically, you don't have to reinvent the wheel with this. You can build on top of this. This will have all the basic features that you would need, and you can add more to it. So I would definitely recommend you guys check this out. Yeah, so we'll be using ERC20 votes. It's a different kind of contract. So a basic ERC20 token would have a minter, a buy, sell, transfer functions. But an ERC20 votes token would need to incorporate voting mechanisms for our governance smart contract as well. So we have a mint function and we have a burn function. So what mint does, it just issues new tokens to a user who's sent us the request to mint them, and the burn function will just burn them. And this is an override function that we need for the ERC20 votes to work properly. So it's called after token transfer. This is basically going to be used in our governance smart contract for the voting mechanism. This is a very simple one, guys. Nothing complicated going on over here. But yeah, this is definitely needed to vote on governance. And the other contract that we're going to be looking in would be the time lock. So let me explain what kind of DAO we are building today. So we'll have a treasury in which we have 2 ETH sitting right now. And now we know that Yash, our very own Yash, has been working very hard building up the Shardium community, and we will submit a proposal to reward Yash for his hard work. So we'll submit a proposal to say that Yash has been working quite hard at Shardium. Now it's time to reward him for his hard work. So we'll give him 2 ETH if the governance decides that Yash deserves it. So yeah, that's the contract. So this is the treasury contract, and this is an ownable contract because we need it to be ownable, because we need to transfer the ownership of this treasury to the governance smart contract. Because what happens is, if we don't transfer the ownership of this treasury, the guy or the person who deployed the smart contract would be able to manipulate this, like transfer funds to me instead of Yash, like we wanted for our governance smart contract. But if we transfer the ownership of this contract to our governance tokens, everything inside the treasury would have to go through the governance model, and people will vote how much money there is in the treasury and who it has to be given to, and all of those things would be decided via governance. No single entity could decide that if we transfer the ownership of this contract. That's what this ownable does. And we have the time lock as well. So before a proposal is executed, guys, we need to give our voters some time to think and decide for themselves whether they want to partake in this, whether they want to get out, or they want to take some time to decide to vote in support of it, or in favor of it, or against it. So this is what time lock basically is to provide some time to the user, a buffer, you can say. And this is the main contract, guys. This is governance contract. So we are using some libraries from Open Zeppelin. There's the governor counting, governor votes, quorum, time lock, settings, etc. So this is our governor contract. It'll take the token that we'll publish, and take the time lock, because we have to take into account who all are our token holders, and only they would be able to vote. And this is the time lock in order to account the time that we will be giving our users to vote and to decide for themselves. This is the voting period, the voting delay, and this is a quorum percentage. So what quorum is basically the percentage of users that need to vote in favor in order for a proposal to be executed. So for example, we set it to around 4 or 5%. So if we don't get 4 or 5% votes, then the proposal cannot be executed. So this is the name of our contract. It's a covenant contract, and the voting delay, voting period, etc., is going to the constructor of this contract. So constructor basically initializes the smart contract on deployment. When we deploy it for the first time, this constructor will run. After that, we can interact with the contract with only functions. And so these are basic functions like voting delay, and return what is the voting delay, the voting period, the quorum percentage, and it'll get the votes. This is the state of our contract. This is the main function. It's the propose function. So this is how a proposal is submitted through this function.
So Jivin, I would just like to ask you something here. Is this code, I mean, like as there are people watching, can we fork this code and, we can also deploy along
Yeah.
to, let's say,
For sure.
so is there a link of the GitHub or something available as of now?
I'll create a GitHub repository right after this webinar, but we'll be deploying this on a local testnet on my local computer. So users can, maybe play around with it and deploy it on the Liberty testnet as well. Like this is your code, guys. You can play around with it as much as you want. Right now, you take a look at it, understand it, and then, maybe add something other than a treasury. Maybe add, I don't know, maybe add another governance smart contract, maybe another smart contract that does whatever you want to do with it. Maybe it just goes to an oracle and gets some data like who's going to win the election in 2024 or whatever. Play around with it. Just it's your code. Do whatever you want with it.
Wow, that's great.
Awesome. Yeah. So this is the proposal threshold. So it's just telling us about the threshold that a proposal needs to go through. And this is the execute function. It takes the same arguments like the proposal. So the targets, the addresses that we need for this proposal, those who are interacting with it, the values that we're going to pass. So you see that later on. This is the call data. It's an encoded string for extracting data that we want to execute for our treasury. So we send the function name over here for the treasury's smart contract that we want to be executed. And the governance smart contract will execute that function, because when we make governance the owner of that treasury, we won't be able to do anything without going through the process of governance. So that's the beautiful thing about DAOs. It's totally decentralized, full security. And the description, and for our case, the description would be rewarding us for his hard work, as you guys will see. All right, and this is to cancel a proposal before executing it. And this is the executor. This is the person who's allowed to execute a smart contract. In our case, we can make everyone the executor. Just whatever you want to do with it, guys. All right. So now we have the treasury, the governance token, the time lock as well. Now we'll try to deploy these contracts, guys, on the local testnet. So for this demonstration, I'm using Hardhat. You guys can search Hardhat 2 on NPM. It's a great NPM library. I would highly recommend you guys to check it out. This is Hardhat, guys. 138,000 weekly downloads. So it's pretty.
I'll put this
heavily
link.
Used. Yeah, sure. Pretty heavily used in the Web3 industry. You can visit the repository as well. And they'll tell you how to install it on your local machine and just initialize projects with it, create some projects of new smart contracts. And also something else we'll be using is Hardhat deploy to deploy our smart contracts. This is an amazing library.
Jivin, Nimesh is asking, can we do it on Remix without setting it up locally? Yeah, would you like to answer?
Yeah, Animesh, you would be able to do that, but the sheer complexity that the governance smart contract has is that you'd have to write a lot of text on Remix in order to execute each and every contract. As you'll see, I mean, the whole reason of creating scripts, JavaScript scripts and TypeScript scripts for this is because so that it becomes easy for us, the devs, to input the data. As you'll see right now, when we deploy the scripts and run them, you see that if we had done it through Remix, it would have been a very tedious task and would have taken a long time. This way it gets phased. And yeah, I would highly recommend you to check this out. All right, guys. So what we'll be doing is we'll be spinning up a local blockchain on my local machine. So for that, we can use npx hard hat node. And I'll also be having all these commands on the repository. So you guys can just follow the steps and run these things for yourself as well. So what npx hard hat node will do is that it'll create a local blockchain. So imagine a local Ethereum running on your system. It'll give you these addresses and their private keys. And you can, every account will have 1,000 ETH in them. So you can see account 5, it has the public key and the private key too, along with 1,000 ETH in each and every account. So we have around 19 accounts, which we can use freely. Like you can spend all of 100 ETH and none of your money would be taken or anything. These are all random, just like a testnet works. It's a testnet on your local machine. So all of our contracts are deployed now on the local machine, and now we can play around with it. So I've also created some scripts with these guys. So the first script we would go through is to create the proposal. But before that, we can see the deployment scripts as well for these smart contracts. So yeah, as Animesh said, like on Remix, we would have to just click on the deploy button and we'd be done. But after that, playing around with these contracts, inputting a lot of bytes, 32 values, and a lot of addresses as people in governance, it becomes a very tedious task. Like deploying is pretty easy over there, but working with these smart contracts becomes very tedious. So we are going to be using ethers.js, and it's also an amazing library like Web3.js and ethers.js. These are two awesome libraries. Ethers. Sorry. Yeah. So this is also an amazing library, guys, to interact with smart contracts. If you're going to be using React frontends or basically creating a DAO, you need to use something like this to connect with MetaMask and Wallet Connect, etc. So highly recommend you guys check it out as well. And for new Web3 devs, you might be wondering whether to use Ethers or Web3. Maybe play around with both of them for a day or two and judge for yourself whichever works for you better. For me, I would say I have been using Web3 for a long time, but Ethers is also gaining a lot of dominance. So do what you guys like best. Okay, so it's just a deploy script, guys. We are going to be using hard hat to deploy this. So these are functions that get named accounts, the deployments, and the network. This will have all the network details from our hard app. And this is a deploy function to deploy our contracts. And this is the deployer. It's the address of the first contract in our local chain. So basically this account will be our deployer in our case, the default one. So what we are doing is deploying the governance token. And this is the method to do this. Is await deploy. The governance token is the name for our contract, governance token. This is the name, guys. So we are going to be using this name to deploy our contract. And the from keyword will be the owner of this contract. So this is the deployer in our case. And it's not taking any arguments, the constructor of it. And we are logging the transaction to see what kind of data it's returning. And we are just waiting for confirmations. So in other blockchains like Ethereum, so mining happens automatically. Now they are moving to proof of stake. So verification will happen automatically. But for our case, we can just wait for some confirmations. Like it's a simulation on our local machine. So it doesn't matter if we use it or not. But for a live network like Liberty, you might need to use that. So I've added this if you want to deploy it to Liberty as well. So now this will log the values of the address of the governance token once it's deployed. And yeah, This is the delegate function. So basically what we're doing is we are delegating the governance token to the account, the deployer. So what this will do is that it will delegate the tokens responsibilities of issuing and transferring the funds to this deployer. So that'll help us in sending more money to other contracts and other users as well in the governance, as you later see. And so the way you call a contract in ethers is ethers.getContract at, and then the governance and the address. And if you were using a React frontend or something, then you'd have to replace this with the ABI. So what's an ABI? It's an ABI, right? Application binary interface. So this is something that Solidity automatically creates for you. It's a JavaScript interface. So we can have a look at that. So something like this, but in decoded form in JSON, and it's done for every contract that gets deployed. So because JavaScript does not know Solidity, so once you interact with your browser, this ABI is what helps you to call those functions in the contract. And yeah, let's now deploy this contract, guys, and see. Let's do this script first. This is the deploying time lock. So we are using the same process. It's just replacing this with time lock and the arguments that the time lock constructor takes. So minimum delay, the delay that we want to give our users before they can execute the contract in the governance. And it's all the same. And now we are deploying the governance contract. So the same process, but we are deploying the governor contract now instead of our token or our time lock. And this takes a lot of arguments. It takes the address of the token. It takes the address of the time lock, because we need to interact with both of them when we are deploying when we are working with our DAO. We need the token to get the votes. We need the time lock to get the time that we have to give our voters before executing it, before a proposal can be executed. We need the quorum percentage, and we need the voting period and the voting delay as well. And once we are done with that, we deploy the. Now what we're doing, guys, is we are setting up the contracts for the roles. So the time lock smart contract gives roles to different kinds of users. So the proposer, an executor, and the admin. So now what we want to do is we want the time lock as well to be done through governance instead of the owner or the admin. We don't want the admin to have the ability to manipulate our time lock, because that beats the point of governance. So what we'll do is we'll grant the role of proposer for the time lock to the governance smart contract, the governor contract that we deployed previously. So that governor contract now becomes the proposer for the time lock. And the executor is address 0. What is address 0? Is just a 0 based address. So this is a null address, as we call it. So this address won't do anything. And once we try to give anyone an executor role, this will just let us give them an executor role. So anybody that comes to our DAO can be an executor, and they can execute on the governance results of the proposals. Now, finally, what we are doing is we're revoking the time lock role of the admin. So the owner, the address that deployed our time lock, is now being ripped of their rights as the admin, and they can't manipulate our time lock smart contract. And the final script is we are deploying the treasury now. And what this amount is, we are giving the treasury to Ether that we are then going to transfer to Yash for his hard work on Shardium and building the Shardium community. So yeah, the same process, but we're doing the
That's so
treasury.
generous of you and the DAO you're creating.
Yeah, man, anything for you, Yash. Yeah,
Oh,
so we are sending the deployer the arguments and the value now too. So this is what this will do is deduct the value from the deployer's wallet and add this to the treasury. So 2 ether would be deployed from the deployer's contract. So let's say the deployer had 100 ether, ETH, or SHM when you deploy to Liberty. And then what to do is deduct 2 ETH from his account and transfer that to the treasury. And when the treasury smart contract will release the funds, it will take those 2 ETH that we deposited into it and give that to Yash. And now what we're doing is that we are transferring the ownership of the treasury to the time lock. So what that will help us in is that when the time period for the execution is over, when we can execute the smart contract, the time lock will execute it and transfer the funds to Yash, or whatever else you want to do it. Doesn't matter. Cool. So these are all the scripts for deployment, and then we do npx hard hat deploy. So deploy all these smart contracts into the local blockchain along with these addresses and amounts. So you can see the first thing we did was deploy the governance token. This is the transaction hash, and this is the address of the contract. This is the gas fee that's used, 17,179,4359. This is the governance tokens, and this is the checkpoint. And it's been delegated. So we delegated the role to our deployer. This is that confirmation for that. Similarly, we have the time lock deployed, and we have the government contract deployed, and the treasury as well, with the 2 ETH now into it. All right, so all of this worked. Now what we'll do is we'll run the scripts. So now we are moving into governing our DAO. So this is a big step, guys. All right. So now we are calling the propose function. What this will do is create a proposal for our governance smart contract. So in our case, the proposal will be to award 2 ETH to Yash for his hard work. Go Yash. All right. So this is we are calling the government contract, and we are calling the treasury. And what this encoded function call will do is that it will create a bytes 32 string for the function name that we need to call. So in our case, the function name that we need to call in the treasury would be release funds. So imagine what this will do is that it'll take this string release funds and convert this into a hexadecimal 32 base string. So 0x, something like this, and then 0000 in 32 bytes. That's what the Solidity will take from us to execute this function. This is what this line do. This is what this encode function data will do. And what is the function to call? We can see it's the release funds function. So we are logging these values to check, and then we are executing the propose function. So we are proposing the function to the targeted addresses, that is the treasury. We want to interact with the treasury, and the value is 0 for now. And the encoded function call is release funds, and this is the proposal description. And proposal description is over here. This is the proposal description. Should we give Yash 2 ETH for his hard work or not? That's what we'll decide. Okay.
and by the way, this is something that we as a whole are gonna decide. So everybody who's here, I think we'll need your help to get me some ETH rewarded.
Yeah,
Am I right? Am I right, Jivin?
Yeah. And I mean, on local, they would not be able to see, they would not be able to vote, but they can definitely give their addresses, and maybe we can have it on the Liberty testnet, and then they can
Yeah.
literally give you some test ETH, some test SSJAM in that case.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, we are calling the propose function with these things, and now what we have to do, guys, is we have to move the blocks or mine them, because For our DAO, we have set the time lock to have one block in between execution and proposal. So like if it would have been the Ethernet or the Liberty testnet, the transaction would have been, executing on their own within the time frame. But because it's a local blockchain, we'd have to and do it manually. So this is the move blocks function. So what this will do is it just run a loop and then it will request the network provider to mine the block. So this is the method EVM_mine. What this will do is this will mine the blocks, however many blocks we want. So if you want to mine 2 blocks or want to mine 3 blocks, this will do that. And in our case, we want to do voting delay plus 1 block. So 1 block other than our voting delay, so that we can then execute those transactions.
Champ is asking it for is it for loop? Like
Yeah. It's a
okay.
for loop.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah, a for loop is we'll take an index. We can equate it to 0, we can equate it to 10 or whatnot. And then we'll check every time it's iterating that the index is less than the amount that we have given in the function. And if it's less, it'll increase the index and execute this code in between. And every time index is less than the amount, it'll keep on executing this code again and again. So until index becomes less than or equal to amount, index will keep on adding itself, and these many blocks will be mined. All right, yes. So yeah, now we are viewing the proposal ID because we need the proposal ID to submit the queues and execute those proposals. So we need this. And we are logging the proposal ID as well. And we are checking the governor state for the proposals state. So what is actually the proposal state and the proposal snapshot. So every time anything happens in our DAO, it'll take a snapshot of it. So everything that happens, it needs to have some checkpoints or snapshots. So imagine you're in a race and there are small checkpoints after every 2-3 kilometers in that race to make sure, whatever placings everyone has, and like basically what are the things going on, where is everyone standing with respect to that checkpoint. So this keeps a track of every situation in that time frame. And this is the deadline for the proposal, the deadline before which we have to execute this. And this is a store proposal ID function. What we are doing is we are storing this proposal ID in our file called proposals.json. So this 31337 is the network ID that Hard Hat gives us. So for Shardium Liberty, it's 8080. And for the test blockchain that we have, it's 31337. You can check this out in your MetaMask as well. Over there also, you need to put these parameters to access the blockchains. Okay, and we're storing that proposal and we are logging the proposal state, snapshot, and deadline, etc. Cool. Now let's run this. Let's run this. So we'll do npx hard hat run scripts / propose. Network will be localhost in our case. All right, so you can see we've done it. This is the proposal description. And this is the release funds function. This is the same release funds function that our treasury holds. So the governance, once this proposal is executed, the governance contract will come to this treasury and tell the treasury to release the funds. And the payee is Yash and his address. Okay. So we are proposing to release funds on this address. This belongs to Yash. And it's the description. Yes. So we are moving blocks. We moved 2 blocks to, for the time lock to execute the proposals after the 2 blocks have been mined. And this is the proposal ID. The current proposal state is 0, so it's not been voted on as of yet. The snapshot is 15 and the deadline is 19. So we have 4 blocks, a bit time right now to execute this. All right, so now let's move on towards voting, guys. Now we have to vote on this. Okay. So what this is doing is it's getting the proposal ID that we want to vote on from this file that we created, proposals.json. So the voter needs the proposal ID to propose to vote for that proposal, and this is what it's doing. So this is the vote way. So 0 is against, 1 is equals to 4, and 2 is abstain. For this example, we're keeping 2 for abstain. So abstain means that they don't want to vote at all. So right now we are voting 1, and the reason is, yes, he's a good boy. Let's make him rich. Come on, let's go. And then we are executing vote function. So this is calling the governor contract. Then it'll move the blocks again for the time lock to add more blocks so that we can execute the transaction. And this transaction, and we are using the cast vote with reason function. So what cast vote with reason will do is it'll take the proposal ID, it'll take the vote away. The vote away in our case is 1 because we want yes to be rich. Okay. And the reason. And then we are going to be executing that transaction and receive that. And then we'll log the reason. Then we check the proposal state in the governor smart contract, and the state will get changed. Before it was 0, then we'll see what the state now is. And now we'll again move the blocks, guys, because we are on a local chain. We have to move the blocks. And then we'll vote it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Cool. Now let's go. We'll execute this as well. Vote.ts. Network is localhost. All right, so we moved 6 blocks. This is the reason. And now the current proposal state is 1. We saw that the current proposal state before was 0. Now it's 1. And then we moved 6 more blocks with time lock to execute, and then we voted on it, guys. Let's go. We voted. Now our voting is complete. So the governance has decided that we should dispatch the funds to Yash. All right. So now what we do is we'll queue this proposal for execution. So what queue function does is it queues the proposal in a staging area where it can be executed now. So imagine an organization where you have taken proposed a decision. Now people have voted on it. Now we have to act on it, but acting on it might take some time because there are other policies and implementations, actions, etc., that are being, in a queue or being taken up, whatever, and you only have so much bandwidth to execute one thing. So we queue that proposal. So as soon as the next previous proposal is done, we can execute this one. That's what queuing will do, and executing will finally execute the contract and transfer the 2 ETH to Yash. All right. So this is the function to call. This is the release funds function. And what the release funds function will do, guys, is right now we have the is released value as false. You'll see in the console, once we release the funds, it'll change the is released value to true and it'll transfer the 2 ETH to Yash. Cool. So yeah, let's queue it. And we are encoding the same function because that's how Solidity does it. We have to encode it. Then the description hash, the description is that Yash is a good boy, and then let's make him rich. Cool. So yeah, we are getting the governor contract. We are queuing it. We are executing the queue function. This takes the similar parameters to propose, the treasury address, this number 0, encoded function in the description. Then we are waiting on this transaction for 1 block. And then we are doing the same thing, moving the blocks and now moving the time as well. Because we need to move the time now for the time lock to execute. And now we are executing it. So this is the execute function. Same parameters as the proposal and the queuing functions. treasury address from 0, encode a function call and description hash. And then similarly, we're waiting on the execution. Then it'll be like treasury funds released, true or false. We'll see that as well. We are calling the is released function from our treasury. This function. This to do is pay Yash and change the Boolean value of his released. All right, guys. So now let's run it. Let's finally pay Yash. npx run script / q and execute.ts. Network will be localhost. All right. So guys, finally we did it. We paid Yash.
Yay.
We have moved blocks, we have executed, and now the treasury funds released are true because we have emptied the treasury and filled Yash's wallet now. Yash is rich. Treasury is sad now.
If this could have been on chain right now, maybe I could have got some funds on my
Oh,
wallet
damn.
that I could have showed to people as well. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could have done it, but it was just about the, delay, or, if someone didn't vote on it, the proposal might not get executed and we'd have to wait on it. So yeah, for sure, maybe I can create a user interface in the coming days and people can, just do this,
bad
make you
people.
rich, Yash.
What if they don't vote?
Then you'll be sad, I
Yes,
guess.
sir.
All right. So we are done with the DAO, guys. We have successfully created our own smart contracts. We have deployed them on the local testnet, and we have gone through the whole governance process. All right. And I would highly recommend everyone to, check the code out. To be live in by this webinar, and if you guys can clone it, run it on your own. Maybe, a good thing would be like, instead of me doing the front end thing, you guys do it and, publish it on GitHub pages or something. Just share it on the Shardium Discord. That would be a great way to learn in public, guys, and, showcase your skills to other people in the community. It's a great opportunity.
I mean, see, after this webinar, and then when the code is open and you also give people the GitHub access, maybe we can see a lot of DAOs created on top of
Yeah,
Shard.
for
So,
sure.
there's a lot of opportunity, and this is why we as a team really wanted to push this webinar out. So yeah, again, thanks to Jivin. Now we have code as well, right? Code.
Yeah.
Are you on mute or you can speak?
No. I unmuted myself. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
we can. Can people just text and let us know if you can hear code or not? Yes. Okay. Cool.
Okay.
If people
Cool.
can.
So that was pretty high level, and I just want to know how many of the participants here are actually developers. How many know actually to code and develop? Who's from humanities backgrounds, non-technical?
So that's count me in, sir.
I
Me
I
too,
just want
me
to
too.
ask. I know I already know you are from non-technical background, but I'm non-tech. Great. Awesome.
Okay, Amit is here.
Okay. Okay. Business design, non-tech. Okay. So yeah, we have a bunch of people who didn't really understand code. I mean, and code one naively, but they still stuck. So thank you all. Since I'm the last speaker, I'm gonna try to throw in a lot of content and ideas at you, and we'll see what sticks. Hopefully, and try to keep you awake. And I want to sort of give reference to the a tweet by Nishal. I mean, it was there. I think it's J241 Wala tweet. So he says, when I try to explain crypto and Web3 to people, they say they don't understand it. And builders and developers don't make it any easier. I'm just paraphrasing. It's not like that exactly, but can't hear you clearly. Okay.
True, is true. Yeah, even as a developer myself, sometimes I think that I get too technical, and someone who doesn't have a technical background might not be able to understand that. So,
Mhm.
even I am at fault sometimes.
Oh, cool, cool, cool. So we'll try to keep it very, very simple. We're gonna bounce off ideas, a lot of ideas from social sciences. We're gonna bounce ideas from history and probably a little bit of technicals here and there, but I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. So since this is a sort of field building workshop, so I want to talk about issues going forward and what challenges we have. So what are the questions we need to ask and think about when we discuss about governance as it relates to blockchains and crypto economic systems? I want to start with one of the greatest theorists of governance in history of modern India and a famous rival of Jawaharlal Nehru. For those of you who don't know who Jawaharlal Nehru was, so Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Jawaharlal Nehru was the first prime minister. And basically, Dr. Ambedkar, he was the primary author of Indian Constitution, published a lot of articles, wrote a couple of books in his lifetime, trying to understand what governance in this new independent India might look like, because we were 500 million people and we were doing, it was sort of an experiment in the sense that it was a new country and we had suffered under colonization for past 250 years. So it was an experiment in the sense that, and Dr. Ambedkar was trying to explore these ideas, of center-state relations. How shall the minorities be protected? What are the minority rights? What are the freedom of speech look like? Freedom of religion, ideas like these. So these were essentially mechanisms of effective democratic governance. And his writings are considered to be like the foundation of understanding how India was kind of an experiment. And this was a sort of an opportunity to understand mechanisms of governance in a young democracy, in a young nation from grounds up. I mean, we did a lot of experiments in independent India. We gave in the universal adult franchise, something called universal adult franchise. So with a stroke of a pen, we gave voting rights to 500 million people. Like this was never done. People in West and people in modern democracies and first worlds had to actually struggle for hundreds of years. It was first given to the landlords, then it was given to the people who paid taxes, who had money, then then it came to women. But we experimented and we gave universally voting rights to everybody. So that was an experiment. The second biggest experiment that we did in India was we kind of held the biggest election in the history of the world. 500 million people voting for our first election, 1951. So that was kind of an experiment too. But again, critics and naysayers used to say that India might not might sort of break away in the first 10 years. But that didn't happen. We are still, kudos to our mechanisms and all the institutions that we have, that we recently celebrated 75th Independence Day. So we are sort of right now, if we look at if we can look at the blockchain governance and Indian governance, so we can draw some parallels. We are again doing some sort of experimenting with this new space, this environment, and we have the opportunities and affordances that this technology has created and provides us. And we need to think about how to address the challenges that governance poses, given the kind of environment that we are in. It's a small market, $1 trillion market, and very, very, it's a decade old. So I'll move to the next slide and we can probably discuss it. Okay, so let's take a little higher level of abstraction and zoom out a little bit and talk about the larger set of interrelated areas that governance is part of. Governance is part of law, regulations. They are all combined together. But so when we talk about the crypto law, we obviously ask questions that need to be addressed are questions about hegemony. So questions like, and when we talk about hegemony, we are not talking about the content of the law. We are talking about should legal system regulate the activity, or does the code regulate the activity? Who regulates the activity? For example, if a transaction involves sending money to a terrorist group, it's immutably executed on a public blockchain. Does law have to give way, or should blockchains give way? Questions like these. So what do we do here? How do we reconcile the two in a way that doesn't cause too much collateral damage? Then there are questions about territoriality. Territoriality is law is, in the sense, very geographic. Indian laws don't apply to Pakistan. Pakistan laws don't apply to Afghanistan and Iran. I mean, every jurisdiction has its own laws. So, but these crypto networks and blockchain networks, they span across the globe. They are not restricted by geography. So, what do we do here? These are the questions that we need to ask. What do we do about questions like these? Again, then the other point being is normativity. Law in itself has ideas of fairness. Law has ideas of and concepts of justice, redress of harms, arbitration. While software code is sort of declarative and it's explicit. So we need to think of some of these concepts and incorporate them into these crypto economic systems. That's some of the fundamental questions in the law side. Now, when you come to regulations is more about the content of the law. It's implementation of this legal structure. So there we have questions like regulatory clarity. Questions like, say, is token offering a security or is it an investment contract under a securities law? I mean, what is it? Is it? I mean, you must have heard about the issues with, I think it was XRP, that ran into challenges with SEC. So what are these? I mean, a lot of ink has been spilled on these issues, but there is still not clarity or as in where the lines can be drawn and how to implement the rules that exist. Second question is about leakages. I mean, questions about when we have a structure, a complete governance structure, when we have it, technology still finds a way to bypass it. Say, sort of money laundering. Let's give me an example. I'll give an example about money laundering. Most of the money laundering laws or rules in the country mandate that the origin and the destination of every transaction should be reported. But now, if you are sending money through a non-custodial wallet to another non-custodial wallet, you basically bypass the system. So what do we do about it? These are governance questions, and these are the questions that we in the space have to grapple with. How do you reconcile both of them? Then there are questions about integrity. We all know, like, it's the biggest elephant in the room about the fake transactions, potential fake transactions, market manipulations are happening. So integrity of the system is in question. What do we do about it? Then there's the question of integration. Integrations like how and when should the blockchain be integrated into this global financial regulatory systems? If we want to do it, how do we do it? And do it in a way that it doesn't harm it doesn't sort of cause harm to the opportunities and potential that these technological systems have. So those are the legal and regulatory questions. But what I want to spend most of my time on is governance. And governance, I mean, maybe you can move to the next slide, please. So the question is, I mean, what is governance? As it turns out to be, it's one of those terms that doesn't have a clear definition, but there are still a number of valid but not mutually exclusive ways to design and discuss what governance is. So we could talk about how do we define it. So we could talk about in terms of input. What does governance do? What is it for? Why do we need governance? So what's out? What I mean, we are doing all this mumbo jumbo. We talked about the code and time locking and all that. What was it all for? What we are trying to achieve? And I'm trying to use I'll be using the definition of this famous Nobel laureate. You can read from this from the screen. His name was Oliver Williamson. He was an economist, Nobel Prize winner. Talked a lot about the economic governance, and he basically defines governance as some kind of like anything that infuses order. So we try
Is it just me or code dropped actually?
Maybe it's a network issue, I guess.
Okay. We'll wait for by the time he joins. Dropped. Okay, cool. I think we should wait. Or maybe Jivin, if you would like to touch upon, what code was going through.
Sure. So I guess let's wait for a minute and then
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
that's
Maybe
fine.
we can wait. Yeah.
Just a minute.
So yeah, by the time maybe we can discuss something about again. So like as code
Any
was,
questions you guys might have?
yeah, maybe we can have some questions. Maybe we can discuss something about again the governance that code was explaining us, and so a lot of philosophical points here, a lot of things to actually. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to watch the video again and like be more.
Mhm.
Uh, no.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing Code and I like to discuss about governance is that you start with one question and you end up with hundreds
Yeah.
because it's such a vast topic. Like even a PhD might not be enough to cover what governance actually is. Actually, like because every kind of organization needs different kind of governance models. And DAOs are something that has been around for like what 2, 3, 4 years, and that's nothing compared to the human civilization's history.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a pretty new thing and pretty revolutionary thing at that, I might add. But yeah, I mean, as much as you guys can learn about governance, and if you're not a developer or a coder, then these are the things like marketing and uh, uh, organization management and communications and publicity, etc. These are the things that would definitely help you in your careers. And if you really want to get into Web3 as a non-tech person, I would recommend you to like research extensively to DAOs and how you can be a part of some big names, Olympus DAO, Maker DAO, even like Compound Finance or even Shardium DAO in the future, right? Because
Yeah,
Shardium's
exactly.
roadmap states that Shardium's going to be a DAO. So like you might not be very well versed with DAOs right now, but what if in the future you're running the governance on
I'm sorry.
Shardium?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know.
All right, no
Something
worries.
something happened to my internet, and I mean, I lost the connection. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean you're living in the
what were you
hills.
talking
So
about? We can take a break, I guess.
yeah, we were just discussing how vast the concept of DAOs actually is.
I mean, they say governance has been a challenge right from the time of Plato and Socrates. And the interesting thing about these questions are that we still discuss these questions and we still don't have any answers. So that's the complexity of governance,
Totally.
Uh,
Totally.
So I guess I was discussing about discussing what was the last thing that you heard? I think it was about inputs.
Order, I guess.
Oh, order. Yeah. So that was definitely. And the second thing that we could think about governance, the second in terms of how we could discuss, think about governance is in terms of inputs. Like, how do you decide on things? How do you execute decisions? How do you impose decisions? Like all the code that you saw when Jivin was showing it, and Yash has to be paid. How is Yash supposed to be paid? And if Yash doesn't get paid, how do we redress that? So for those of you who have some political background, this will be equivalent of legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. That's what it was. And again, the questions of what are the roles and agents and institutes that go into making up these systems, and how do these systems look like when we map them onto blockchain or crypto economic systems. But the third thing, the decision space that you see, that's probably my favorite. And that's something that comes between input and the outputs, like decisions. And most of the governance basically happens there. So what is governance? Governance is about decisions, and not just any kind of decision making. It's a particular subset of decisions. where complex organizations make complex decisions. Say, for example, if you are a simple organization, so let's take a simple organization, sort of say dictatorship of me. So then my decision is not governance. Of course, it's like a complex decision because from a neurological perspective, all the neurons and everything in my head, it's very complicated. But from the governance process, it's a simple decisional process. It's not governance. Similarly, if the decisions are made, that could be simply encoded in a rule. Say, have a variable. If the variable is more than 10, go left. If the variable is more than less than 10, go right. So again, that's not governance. That's, I mean, all things like smart contracts and any kind of software code is very good at these things. That that could be reduced to say some sort of simple decisional matrix, right, left, up, down. You know, if you do this and do that, if something is this and then do this. No, simple decisions. So that's, but that's not governance. Governance is about, as I said, complex organizations making complex decisions. So I would say blockchains are complex, corporates are complex, governments are complex, and they make complex decisions. So that's where we could, you know, think of governance when you're talking about it. There are communities of different kinds of actors with say different kinds of different interests. And then there we have this complex technology in the middle, and many of the decisions which are made are not simple either. So that's why, but some of them may be simple, but many of the decisions that require the weighing of different costs and benefits with different participants in those complex networks having different views. So governance is about managing those difficult choices. So maybe next slide. Yeah, all right. It's also about, it's also a mechanism of trust. And here's a chart from a book from Professor Verback. He is the professor of law, I think, in Columbia University. No, he's in Wharton School of Business. So this is a chart from his book. So these are different structures of trust, and blockchain is a different kind of structure. So the point being that governance is about imbuing trust in the systems. I can think of an example. I think there was a recent partnership between Maersk and IBM. Maersk, for those who don't know, is the biggest global shipping company, and IBM, I mean, no introductions there. IBM, they created this system called TradeLens. It's a DLT-based system for international shipping. And the big problem they had was that they built an open blockchain that would virtualize and digitize the entire global shipping process. A multi-billion dollar, multi-trillion dollar, rather, I should say, industry, which is horrendously fragmented. The problem was that they had to get everyone else in the network into the ecosystem. It's not useful to build a blockchain system just for us. I mean, it's a shared, it's decentralized, so there need to be more players in it. So they went to other shippers, they went to freight forwarders, they went to the ports, and you know, they were like, guys, we have this amazing technology, come and join us. We have built this platform that will virtualize everything. And they were like, no, that's not gonna happen, because are you crazy? You're a competitor. Why should we join you? So that was a governance challenge. So recently, so they had to make changes in the structure, in the governance system, so the trust could be established. So now they made these changes, and now they have, I think, 5 out of the biggest 6 shipping companies onto their platform, and that was a governance challenge. So another, I think another example that I could think of, probably maybe I'll talk about this in the next slide, about the land titling system. I need to talk about that. Okay, all right. So we talk about governance in general. So, but what does governance, blockchain governance, mean? So first of all, there are 3 different things we need to disambiguate. One is governance by blockchain. Blockchains govern. They impose a set of conditions that produces a shared sort of state, a consensus about a ledger, and then that governs by basically determining what that ledger is. You know, this is blockchain 101. What is a blockchain? Blockchain is a shared ledger. For example, say if you are using a blockchain-based land titling system, and there's an interesting report by Niti Aayog from 2016, which talks about this. They implemented these 4 pilot projects across India. One of the pilot projects was this land titling. And should we move our entire land titling system, this real estate, property ownership, and everything onto a blockchain. There were arguments in for, and it was a successful project. They conducted it, I think, in Andhra Pradesh or Hyderabad. I don't know, somewhere there. There was other project in the same report about. It was regarding pharmaceuticals. The other was about, I think, pharmaceuticals. The other was about education certificates, bringing them onto blockchain, minting them on blockchain. That talk about NFTs and all. And I think the last one was pharmaceutical and fertilizer subsidy. So this was a report. I mean, government of India is sometimes, it makes us crazy. Finance ministry doesn't like blockchain. RBI doesn't want anything to do with the crypto, but Niti Aayog is in full support of it. So there is problem everywhere. So, but what I'm trying to say is land titling and keeping these records onto the if we want to bring these records onto the blockchain, it involves records and processes managed by different organizations, including, governments. So blockchain governance is sometimes talked about in terms of governments using blockchain, but I'm talking about a different kind of governance. I'm talking about governance not by blockchain, but governance of blockchain. And one aspect of governance of blockchain is consensus. Consensus could actually be defined as a set of technical and other mechanisms that brings the system into consensus. So it can have this kind of decentralized shared state. That's the lowest level of blockchain governance in my opinion. But the hard part, however, is that when you build on top of it, and that's really what we can break down into 3 levels. And I've used this framework from Eleanor Ostrom. She was a Nobel laureate economist, and it basically is on the operational level. Governance on the operational level could look like something of a day-to-day operations. How do you form rules? What do you do on a daily basis, assuming that everything is works as expected? This could, like, an equivalent analogy of operations, day-to-day operations could be you going into a DM's or a Tehsildar's office, and he works based on the rules that have been encoded. So day-to-day operations, every day you go, you have to sign certain things. So they follow those rules. Now, the second level or abstraction of this framework is the collective choice. Collective choice is when the rules need to be changed. You have certain rules that have been set up, and now you need to change those rules. So this could be, imagine something like moving from a proof of work to a proof of stake. What if we want to change the emission schedule of tokens? What if we want to make changes for, say, decisions that require some kind of collective action? All kinds of changes that require some kind of consensus, some kind of a majoritarian consensus. If we look into the Indian constitution, again, this could be something, if we are making constitutional changes, we have around 121 constitutional amendments. So this could be like, and there are different layers to the constitutional consensus that we are trying to build. So this could be something, collective choice could be something changing some part of constitution that requires only majority in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. This could be 2/3 majority or 3/4 majority. So these kinds of choices. So they will come under this. Now the last part, which is like the holy grail or the last end of it, is the constitutional choice. Bringing the larger consensus about GST implementation. It's sort of something that only Parliament could do. They had to bring states on board. They had to bring not municipalities, but what if municipalities were on board? So these were like large consensus building exercises. In blockchain terms, we could look at the DAO hack of 2016, where there was an exploit. There was some problem with the code, and this hack was the hacker basically stole around $150 million, if I'm not wrong. So he stole $150 million, and the only choice left with the community, and it put existential threat. It was an existential threat not only to the DAO, it was also an existential threat to the Ethereum on like whole. So what they finally decided, like, they had just 2 choices: either to do nothing or fork the entire chain. So they went with the later and created a whole new chain. And that's why you have an Ethereum Classic and you have this Ethereum. Where are the slides? The previous slide, bro. No, the previous slide. Previous slide. Did I miss anything in the previous slide? No, I think I'm done. Constitutional changes. Yeah. Okay, fine. So Next slide. So what do we do from here? So my question is, what do we do? How do we think about this governance challenge, and how do we do it? And I would say we have two broad sets of resources that we can draw upon. Number one would be mechanisms or understandings of governance in other domains. So you got like huge compendium and huge literature in other fields where governance is very, very maturely described. And I have been always imploring people on, it's not the blockchain space of the Web3 space. It's not just about builders and traders and finance guys. For it to grow to realize its potential, people from all other disciplines should come in, must come in for it to grow. So it's not a developer's domain. It has to be, for it to evolve to what our expectations are. People from other fields have to come in. So say political theorists can come in and they can bring in the concepts of separation of powers, checks and balances, notions of social contracts. And the challenge for developers like Jivin, would be, how do we map these or extensiate these concepts into crypto economic systems? We could also, there's also literature in information systems about IT governance, which speaks about governance in terms of, say, decision rates, who can do what are the accountability systems around them, and what are the incentives that apply to them. In economics, I mean, there's a whole slew of different concepts of governance, too many to go into now, but like thinking about the transaction costs, game theory, about the frameworks of, say, for example, Albert Hirschman, who talks about exits and voices and loyalty as options in the governance system. And last but not least, finally, the internet governance, which has actually two different streams of experience. One is the experience of groups like ICANN, which have built practices about multi-stakeholder systems. How do you get a whole group of different actors like government and private to reach a consensus and have a structure for working together in a multi-stakeholder forum? And then we also have a legacy of something called Internet Engineering Task Force, ITFS, Internet Engineering Task Force things. So things like RFC process for proposing different changes, and the notion of a rough consensus, and running code to make decisions. So these are the things that we need to investigate and incorporate into this debate if you're talking about, like, improving, evolving this process. We also have, into the next slide, if you can go to the next slide, we also have like these powerful tools that we are building in the Web3 space. So mechanisms that allow blockchains and crypto economic systems to facilitate good governance, including incorporating the rules of governance directly into systems, into smart contracts, into tokens themselves. That the exercise that we did, giving governance rights to tokens. So ERC20 token, but it's a special kinds of token that has governance rights. So mechanisms like the mechanisms of signaling. I mean, we could draw upon literature from electronics and communications there, signal processing, feedback loops, and whatnot. If anybody has idea, I mean, if anybody is from electronics and communication background, he might understand, they have these feedback loops, they are building these systems, actuators, sensors. So mechanisms like these that signal the preferences of different members of community, sort of in a non-binding way. That's something that can be done through ad hoc votes, ad hoc votes, token delegation votes, and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, then there are these compartmentalizations that Cosmos and Polkadot. So what that basically means is maybe you don't like the governance structure of what you're building on. So say, for example, Shardium has a certain governance affordances that it provides. You don't like that. So what you do is you still believe in the security, you take up the security, like, built on top of it, but you can you're using it for security, but you have your own governance designs. So Polkadot, I haven't really looked into Cosmos much, but Polkadot has this Dr. Gavin Wood. It was sort of what they wanted to do was what Gavin Wood couldn't do in Ethereum, so he did in Polkadot, create this network of chains called parachains, and that could be interoperable with each other. So next we can have this, we also have this, the ability in all kinds of digital systems to create these collectives of people who share interests and informally get together to participate. So we could talk about these meetups that we have. Something could come up out of this. This could be like a strong lobbying group that Yash is organizing, Chandresh, or I mean, these small informal communities, they don't have any formal roles, but they could still have influence within the community, and they could work on with the community to steer the governance process in a certain way. So I would, I mean, I'll give a movie reference here. How many of you have watched the movie called Dune? Anybody? Oh yeah, good, great. Oh wow, everybody has watched Dune. So you could think of these self-organizing groups as Bene Gesserit, the ladies group that are in the shadows, but they are steering the politics of the entire system. So these meetups, and why these meetups, why I love these meetups and these informal groups and these communities that are building up inside the system is because, this is where the influence builds up. This is where the lobbying starts. There's a lot of politics, and I mean, all bad things apart, but these could be, and I mean, this is a great way to enhance and grow, evolve a system where everybody's voice is heard. It's not necessarily that you are using the token vote. I mean, there's a lot of governance that happens not just on chain. A lot of off-chain governance has a lot of weight, so as to speak, in these communities. Then we have these on-chain voting mechanisms we just spoke about. I mean, the interesting case could be, we could talk about Tezos and Decred. They have these formalization methods that they have implemented that allow tokens to be used as mechanisms of voting and automatically implementing governance change. So you don't like something on Tezos, you could have a proposal sent and people could vote. They have the, I mean, it's an inherent inbuilt mechanism. Ethereum doesn't have it as such, but Tezos and Decred, they have inbuilt it. Liquid democracy, quadratic voting. I mean, there's a lot of literature on that. How, what I mean, liquid democracy basically comes from this concept called rational apathy, which is basically, say, for example, I don't have the time and energy and understanding to vote for something, so I'm gonna just sit it out. Well, because I don't know anything. So what you could instead do is pick others who you think have the knowledge and have the time, and you believe in their ideas and their approach, and you can just on revocable basis delegate your vote to them. So I don't have the, I mean, it's basically what we do in democracy. We choose our elected leaders and they make decisions on behalf of us. But instead of, because we are in Web3, in legacy system, you cannot bring back your vote. You cannot recall an MP or an MLA. But here you can just, I mean, I don't like what he's saying, I can just revoke my vote and can vote, give it to somebody else, or I can do it on my own. There are also these quadratic voting, and this is something interesting because we have been brainstorming and spitballing around the ideas of quadratic voting in our internal talks. Quadratic voting is a mechanism that was built by, what was the chap's name? I think it was Glenn Wheel. That's he's called, and here's a group called, I mean, they implemented this, Glenn Wheel and Radical Markets. Yeah, so they are using quadratic voting is again, how do you, the aim is to give voting preferences and the voting rights to minorities. I'm a token holder. I don't have, I'm a small token holder. Governance, I don't have much governance power, but how do we balance it with people who have, like whales? Whales have large holdings of tokens. So in order to balance the system and make it more fair, you have the equation in the smart contracts that somehow, not manipulates would be a wrong word for the lack of a better, but sort of balances it out. So minorities have a say in the voting process. So how they actually do it is, it's interesting. Quadratic, because they say, so you have certain voting power. So I have 100 tokens and it gives me, say, power of 100. And Jivin has 16 tokens. It gives him power of 16. The voting weight in terms of, I mean, if you have 16 units of power, he has to pass a proposal. On the other hand, Jivin has only 4, and now he has 4 units of voting power. What quadratic voting does is, it has a, in the equation you can find, if you look at the equation, it's available on the internet, it's open. It has a square root. When you're calculating the voting power, it has a square root. So my 100 would be reduced to, say, 10, because the square root of 100 is 10. So my voting power from 100 is reduced because of that square root is reduced to 10. Jivin's is reduced from 16 to 4, and Yash's voting power is reduced from 4 to 2. Now, if you see the difference, 116 is like a lot. If we use something like what we just saw in the token voting system, or most of the token voting systems that you see, whales have it. Whales, they can manipulate any proposal. Now what quadratic voting does is kind of evens it out. You have more tokens, but there is a square root, guys, watch out for it. You can still vote, and you could have a fair system of governance or voting, whatever. There are then these mechanisms of arbitration. Okay, arbitration, this is interesting. This is like saying when there's an issue, there's a problem between, or there's a harm that needs to be redressed, we go to the court. So creating decentralized computational courts and have some kind of a jury embedded into the code, like it's a duty of every governance holder, governance token holder, to vote on or be a part of the jury and make decisions on behalf of some dispute resolution mechanism or whatnot. So if everything else fails, then we just bloody fork the system because nothing worked. So we just create something new. So folks have a long history in open source systems, but this is not something that we find in traditional systems. I mean, you cannot simply say, oh, I don't like Pakistan, so I'm gonna move Pakistan from, say, west of India to somewhere else, or I'll move somewhere else. You don't have those affordances. This is only possible in this. You don't like something, you can just have a hard fork or a small fork, soft fork or a hard fork or whatnot. So that's it. I think those are powerful tools that we have. What else is coming? Next slide, please. Okay, so I think this is like the end. So what do we need to do from here? These are a bunch of options we had. What do we do from here? I mean, this will probably be the last thing that we can talk about. And I mean, I'll be free to talk about more about it in question and answer sessions. What we could actually do is build some kind of a compendium. This is like a pet project of mine. We could do something like this. We could sort of map all these ideas of governance across these systems, across, say, Ethereum. How does the Ethereum community see governance? And it will be different because different people have different notions of governance. So everybody has a different. How does the Shardium community? How does the Shardium community in Ahmedabad see that the direction of Shardium should be? How does the Pune community see? Where does the Pune community want the Shardium to go? So there could be like a little digital group of people, northern people, who say, okay, we don't like it this way, we want to change it somewhere. So have these. So you could have any number of ways that the communities want the whole blockchain to be steered into. So a great exercise could be create this governance assessment tools of all these dApps and blockchains. And basically, if somebody wants to build a system, he could just pick and choose from this. So a governance assessment tool, in my opinion, could be like a very healthy exercise. And kudos to I think Greg and Shahzad. I think I recently spoke to them about, they were doing this university outreach program where they are trying to onboard a lot of people, and I would implore them to not just look at developers, but look at other people from the other backgrounds, other subjects, other research from political science or control theory, not just developers. I mean, it's not Ethereum is not Ethereum because it has many developers. Ethereum is Ethereum because it has a lot of other people who complete the system. So but it's an ongoing process. It's a community-driven process. Will take time. And if anybody is interested in talking about these questions and talking about governance, my Twitter handle is, it's mentioned somewhere. You can just feel free to shoot me anytime, and I'll be happy to respond. So yeah, thank you.
What I feel here is so that has been a huge, we got an abundance of knowledge here, not just the things that you have told us, not just you but Jivin as well. So not just we got to learn how to code, but also the governance and the different aspects, the problems that how to bring things into the real world. Maybe what we should do is we should have a different session with you on Twitter or on Discord or so like I still want to revisit all of these things and would want to watch things. And I think apart from me, other people are also thinking same, like Amit is also saying, yeah, we need to have a different session. Surya also wants, Nimesh is also saying. So Yeah, see, Chetan also posted something. Maybe so like what we'll do is we'll for next 5 minutes we can take some Q&As if we have. Chetan has asked something. Maybe Code you can read that out and answer it.
Could you elaborate on the square root concept of the tokens in the next event, because everyone will have their token power square root? Okay, so this is interesting. So again, as I said, governance is about choices, right? What are the choices you make? So internally in DAC, Jivin and me are having this debate over what kind of voting power should we give. Should we have a quadratic voting, like what you spoke about, or should we have a conviction voting? Conviction voting is, again, what is it that we it's a trade-off. What is it that we want to do? Quadratic voting balances out minority rights with the majority, but conviction voting helps you give better preferences. Say you have a conviction voting would be like you have 15 different proposals, and it's never a binary. It's not I hate this proposal and I like Modi ji and Rahul Gandhi.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you want to give 40% preference to Rahul Gandhi, 50% to Modi ji, and 10% to Kejriwal. So conviction voting, what it does is that it takes all of those choices into account, and based on that, it ranks Modi ji, Rahul Gandhi, and Kejriwal, and decides who is the best leader based off of those values that the users would give it.
So basically,
and quadratic voting is something as that Code explained you guys.
So it could be something like you have proposals and you are giving preference and waiting for others to have the preference. I mean, I could be 20% to something, but Jivin could be for the same proposal, Jivin could be 80%. So there's a threshold. Once the threshold reaches, the smart contract fires and the proposal is passed. Now, what you want to do with the proposal, it could be, the proposal could be about paying out. Here's an interesting idea. I believe the corporations, Web2 models of this hierarchical system. DAOs is good, but most of us don't really understand what it is. Essentially, we will be, if DAO is there, we will be working we'll start working for a computer code. So it would be a company in itself. You stop working for a company and you can start working for you're working for a computer code, not owned by anybody. There's no CEO, there's no hierarchy, there's no boss you report to, but you're working for the code. And code, if you don't like the code, you can just bloody change the code.
You can change the code through governance as well.
Yeah.
That can
how do you change?
be done through deciding.
What kind of things you want? Do you want it simple, yes and no? What kind of governance? Autonomous. We need to draw the distinction between automatic and autonomous. And again, to get a little technical, because I'll be drawing in on control theory. So control theory is like you have a system. For those of you, if somebody is an electronic engineer or an electrical engineer, control theory basically says you have a system or a plant, what do you call it? You have certain actuators, which are control levers. Okay, you could look at this as cars. Control levers of a car are like a basic car is a steering wheel, accelerator pedal, and probably a brake. So these are the control levers. And these are controllable. So talking in controllability. So this is what these are the minimum things that you need to control something. Now there is observability. What is the minimum thing that you need to observe a system? So if you're talking about a car, the minimum thing that you need to observe a system is probably a dashboard to check the vitals of the car, tail kahan hai, wo kahan hai, ye kahan hai, and probably you need a side mirror. So although we had this back in 2014 election, the first Modi run was minimum government, maximum governance. But the problem with maximum governance is it becomes too messy. You need to size your governance to only the things that you can manage. If you are having a maximum governance, you won't be able to manage anything. So what smart contracts does is it automates a lot of stuff. So you only have to manage, you only size the thing that you want to manage as a human. So humans can manage, say, what the goals of a DAO are. What are we trying to achieve? So I think of DAOs at the basic level as simply, I would say, at this basic level, it's a group of people having a shared goal. That's it. group of people having a shared tool. So, and we need to distinguish between the tools. I mean, DAO is not a snapshot at a multi-sig and all these tools on these fun toys that you have. It's not an organizing. It's a purpose and people believing and participating in the purpose.
It's a mission.
Yeah, I'm part of a lot of DAOs, and I see this participation. It's a huge problem. I mean, all these DAOs are grappling with this problem. People are not participating. How do you make people participate? So if you want to get into a DAO, I mean, people would get into a DAO, say you want to get into a DAO, okay, maybe I'll put some money and governance tokens. I mean, it will speculate.
Yeah, everyone's part of a DAO these days, but like to govern it, to actually see the day-to-day workings and to actually participate in the voting processes, decide on which direction the DAO is actually going. That's a whole different thing that
I mean,
most people do not do.
You work in companies, right? I mean, I believe most of you are working in companies. Most of you have a job. So you work in companies. What are the day-to-day operations? Now, imagine instead of working for a company, you're working for a software piece of code. And it's autonomous. Autonomous is in the sense there's a lot of feedback going in. So because I was talking about these actuators and sensors. So sensors monitor the observables. I think there was a recent, it wasn't recent. I think I read it back in 2019. This was a piece by David Hoffman. You can look it up. It was in Columbia Law Journal. So he had mapped out this ICO era mania. So top 50 coins. So he did a little research on them. And what what the outcome was that top 50 coins back in 2019 from the ICO era did not, 90% of them did not deliver on their roadmaps. Now, if you're a part of DAO, you could actually have this encoded within the system. You could have a sensor or like your KPIs, you call them. You could have these KPIs, roadmaps. Okay, on Q1, we will do this. Q2 of 2023, we'll do this. And the output of the DAO would measure these, and the DAO would actually measure these. Are the targets being met? If the targets are not being met, so maybe there is a liquidation and people get their money back. And you could have the feedback back into the system where you will have to steer the system into making these. Maybe Jivin is coding and we have a deadline of 3 days and he has. So the DAO would just steer the system, vote on the proposal, throw out Jivin, bring in a new developer, and the developer could maybe bring in a bunch of more developers, take the funds from treasury, hire a bunch of developers so that we could reach our goals. So, these are dynamic systems, they are very complicated systems and complicated questions around it. So maybe, yeah, I mean, I would love to have a different session. But this is our website. We are still building it. Go on to there.
Welcome to Desi Protocol, guys.
Okay.
Right. So what is Desi? You're building the first lending protocol on Shardium. So a lending protocol is where you can earn yield on your money and you can borrow against that money as well. So have a look at, compound finance, or Aave, or a lot of these lending protocols, and you get an idea of what we are building. And as we mentioned, we are deciding on various DAO governance concepts like quadratic voting and convection voting. And something else that we are, deciding on is our token design. So it's going to be the most versatile token that you've ever seen in your lives, guys. I mean, if you have, explored other blockchains and other tokens as well for different protocols, this is going to be by far the most different and most innovative token you will see, because we are using something called augmented bonding curves. So what is a bonding curve? So a bonding curve is, for example, when you buy our token, as our supply reduces, the price will increase. And once you try to sell it, the price will also increase, because basically what we'll do is we'll take some kind of exit tax from you guys, because basically you're leaving our DAO high and dry. Then the governance process gets disrupted and bottom. So we are deciding on putting a tax so that other governance holders and the other members of our DAO are fairly compensated. So that'll go to a pool that'll help the DAO and the protocol to take charge for any future consequences that we might have. And basically what we are trying to build is a DAO that actually people want to govern and use. Because if a DAO is not user friendly, as most apps these days are not. So if a DAO is not built for the users and users don't like to interact with that DAO, then what's the point, right?
This is one of the questions that we could, leave it. We were thinking of, because ours is a startup, and startups inherently are risky.
For sure.
Now we are building on top of another startup, Shardeum, which is again, we are taking some more risk. And over and above, it's a Web3 space, it's new and nascent. So there's, again, too much risk. So we are taking on risk of higher order risk and risk over risk over risk. So what we are thinking of is having a primary market within our community. So this will be entirely a community decision later on, but initially what we are trying to do is, again, drawing in inspiration from India, Mera Bharat Mahan. When we got our independence in 47, we closed our economy. Closed in the economy because we didn't want to face the outside competition. Our industries were young and nascent, so we didn't want to take on the risk of somebody coming up like East India Company and taking India out. So we closed our economy and we let the industries inside thrive. So that's the idea here. What we are going to do is we are going to be initially the primary market maker. So we won't be listing our tokens on, say, outside centralized exchange. I was once
exchanges, no centralized exchange would have, a token
advisory board of one of these investment firms. And one thing I always realized, saw was the projects and entrepreneurs, they wanted to, always list their tokens on dApps and all these centralized exchange. They wanted to just move the token out. But the problem with that is you are taking too much of kachra from outside. You have to insulate yourself from the risks that possess. For the long run, if you want to create a robust and a resilient system, you have to make sure that the system is protected from everything that's happening outside. So what augmented bonding curves would help us achieve is that we'll be the market maker. So if you want to buy our token, you can buy it directly from our DApp. But when you leave the token will be burnt. The token will never leave the system until then, and this could be a governance decision, until the community feels okay, now, right, we have enough robust treasury, because our token will be backed exactly by the amount that's been, the fees that are being made going into the pool, the lending fees that we have, exactly the exit taxes, and entry tax, and all the taxes that we have and whatnot. So our tokens will be backed by something. So it's not just that the value. So our tokens are collateralized by the treasury, by the treasury. Plus, they also have some value added to it. So tokens will always remain in the system until the community decides, okay, now it's time to open up. 1991, liberalize India, open the markets, let foreign investors come. So that's when we decide we go out and we are ready to face the world. So, so it's not just the facing, we will actually be there for the long run, because we know.
Man. At the end of the day, you have to be sustainable, in order to, again, you have to build something sustainable in order to go, have a longer run. So that's there. And yeah,
sure.
the idea of, the bonding, the augmented bonding that we are talking about, and having, this is there are so many things to, discuss. Maybe definitely we should have one more session, maybe with Code and Jivin on, again, as I said, on Twitter or on maybe on Discord, and maybe others can join.
Maybe a Twitter space or something.
Yeah, maybe. So that's something we can do. What I am doing here right now is I'm putting the as we mentioned, we have this swag giveaway. So I have just put a link here. Maybe you guys can fill out this. Everybody, including I'll also ask Jivin and Coad to fill this. However, I'm sending you guys some swags anyway. But you can also fill this. And yeah, join the community. Be there. Jivin and Coad are always there to answer you, to help you. Not just there, but also in the they have their own Twitter handles. So that's there. Maybe you can connect with them, follow them, and
maybe it's a good time to share our Twitter handles and.
I mean, what you can do right now is you can just take again, open the slide, or Jivin, you can open the slide, the first slide, and that's where people can find your Twitter handle. So yeah, if somebody wants
sure.
to connect with them, follow them, that's their Twitter handle. And yeah, man, again, yeah, Desi protocol as well. So yeah, that's the
Do
product.
follow Desi protocol, guys.
Um, again, join the community. Maybe we can have more discussions there. This is something we can also, there's this off topic. There are different channels where code, you can bring all of your expertise and things that you are doing
Yeah,
here.
like expertise.
Maybe put all the
I
resources.
barely know. I barely know economy. I think I know tokens, but whatever.
Yeah,
Not
maybe
expertise.
definitely you should put all the resources there so that others can also read about it. There are other channels as well where you can put all these resources and help the community. So
Well,
yeah, man,
I'll be writing an article. So this is going to
yeah,
be a good time.
exactly.
I'll be writing an
Yeah,
article for the presentation. So I'll be sharing it with the community. So, feel
yeah,
free, guys, if
exactly.
you have missed
That's
something, if you don't get it, maybe you can
Yeah,
read. Somebody is a reader, somebody is a visual learner. But there will be an article coming soon, probably next week. So
that
yeah.
article is something, yeah, we had a chat about, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely looking forward to that. Maybe community can learn something from it as well. And yeah, it was really nice having you guys. I have learned a lot, not just now, but I'll also revisit the video. Maybe create a DAO for myself, or and when Jivin opens the code, maybe others can also create DAOs for themselves. And same goes with
for sure, man.
your knowledge as well, and the resources that you can share us. So
Mhm.
yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for both of you to be here. This was a very interesting session. Please, everyone can. Yeah, this will be. I will be will be putting this video on YouTube as well. So that's there. Again, do follow both of them. They have put really hard work. I mean, they have been they have been preparing these slides. They have been preparing for this webinar for a very long time now. So do follow them, and yeah, people can also put their links here. You can also put code. You can also put the links here in the chat as well if you want to. And then I think yeah, we should now wrap up. Yeah, that's there. Thank you everyone for joining, and a special thanks to Jivin and Code, man. This was an awesome webinar. I think for me it was one of the best webinars so far. So
Yeah.
cool,
Glad you
man.
liked it, bro.
Nawazish,
Thank
Nawazish,
you.
Nawazish. Love you,
A
brother.
lot, a lot to discuss, a lot to work. I mean, we are gonna be working anyway together in the future, so that's there as well.
For sure,
Cool,
man.
man.
For sure.
Cool. Let's wrap this up. Thank you everybody for joining. Bye. Have a good night
Bye,
for
guys.
for
All
listening.
right. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye everyone.
Bye bye.